So, how many, 40 years you said?
43 and a half.
43 and a half, that's right. Yeah.
September 1st, 75 to today, 19, whatever, 2000,
Whatever
whatever it
year
is.
it is.
2019, I think it is.
And so, tell me, you started out as a dispatcher. I didn't know that.
Yep. I started out as a dispatcher in 1975, and not a job that I was particularly interested in, but the Comprehensive Employment Training Act monies became available, and I had already been laid off from a job, and I had enrolled at college. I was going to go back to my desire, which was become a pharmacist, a math science major. And then the phone rang, and I'm kind of like, well, boy, this job with benefits and college, and I had to go to where the benefits were. So I went to the dispatchers and didn't know what dispatchers did. I didn't know anything about police work. I've been pulled over a few times. I got a few tickets. That was about my sum total experience with law enforcement. But it was something that interested me, I guess, as I got into it. A few years later, I was given an opportunity to become a deputy sheriff and work in the jail, because that's pretty much how you started there. You didn't start out on road patrol, you went to the jail first, with a few exceptions. So I worked in the jail for over a year, and I made it to road school. I went to road school. I worked at road for a while. I was able to take tests, and then I took the sergeant's test and passed it, and I became a sergeant. And then I did that for, I don't know, I think like 6 years. And after a while, I said, oh, the sergeant's okay, but I really want to spend more time catching the bad guy rather than just take reports. I want to be able to outsmart these guys and figure out what they did and be able to charge them with it. So in order to do that, there was an opening for investigator that came up, and I gave my stripes up, which was a cut and pay, and I became an investigator.
You had to take a cut and pay?
I took a cut and pay. Loss of rank and cut and pay. But I really liked that, because I was doing things that I really wanted to do and making a difference, I thought, you know, particularly when it came to things like child sex abuse. You know, if I could get that bad guy to tell me what he did, legally, of course, then that little boy or girl would never have to testify, because it's pretty tough for a defendant to say, well, you don't have any proof when I have you telling me in a written statement that you did it. And I always felt that was maybe one of the biggest contributions I made to what we do here at the Sheriff's Office, was to spare those children the pain of testifying in open court. And if I could do that, that was what I was going to do. And I got a lot of confessions for that. So I did that, and then Ron Merrill decided it was time to pack it in. He was the chief deputy at the time. I took it on a provisional basis, which means that I had to score in the top 3 on the promotional exam when it came. And that chief deputy test is not an easy one. And I did, and I was given a position, and that's what I've done since.
So and you've been doing that for 25 years?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
since I think like 1994 to now.
So when you became dispatcher, did you ever think you were going to get into law enforcement? Or
No.
No.
I didn't know where I was going to go, because I didn't know anything about law enforcement. So it's kind of interesting how that all kind of progressed.
So, but what made you want to get into it as you were a dispatcher? Were there other?
Well, if you know anyone who's a police officer and you hang around them any length of time, you know, it does. Some of the stories that you hear are rather exciting. You say, boy, I wish I could have been part of that. And it's not rocket science, but it does take a certain type of individual to be able to be a police officer. And if you want to be a police officer and you want to work road patrol, then at that time, you know, the only way you could do it was to go through the jail. So I went into the jail. And working in the jail is not a very pleasant experience. I have to take my hat off to the guys who work at the Genesee County Jail, because that is a very demanding job. It's a very difficult job. You are always on pins and needles in there, because, you know, these are people who don't really like you, and they really don't like being where they are. And it's a work environment with a lot of tension in it that can blow off at any minute. And all you're trying to do is keep the lid on things. It's not a fun place to work. Your co-workers, they don't usually get recognized for what they do. They may not be the nicest people in the world to work with, so every day you come to work and you're dealing with these and you're dealing with that, and I don't know how these guys do it for 25 years, to be honest with you. So I feel that I was blessed, and I do take my hats off to those guys, and the same with the people who are our dispatchers here. I have to take my hat off to them.
Now, how long were you a dispatcher for?
From 9/1/75 to 6/4/77.
Okay, so a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you kind of came in. There's not many people that, like, I know the Orleans County Sheriff was a dispatcher before he became
Yes,
sheriff.
you're right.
So not many people jump from usually dispatching to.
Our current sheriff started in dispatch.
Oh, he did?
On 6/4/77, when I went to the jail, guess who came into dispatch?
Really? So
William A. Sharon Jr.
did he come to take your job?
He took my job in dispatch.
Oh, he did.
He started the same day I started into jail.
Oh, so you guys, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and so you guys have had he followed.
He did.
So you guys have had a close working relationship.
Yeah, in the early 80s, we went to the field training program. We were the first, probably in the state, to go, because we had a very progressive sheriff. Doug Call, a very, very dear friend of mine. He was a great, great sheriff. Mm-hmm. And as Under Sheriff Ron Hallman, impeccable man. I still think very fondly of both those guys. And they started this field training program, which started in San Jose, California. What is that? Well, rather than just take these guys out of basic academy and put them in a red and white and say, don't get in trouble, kid, which is what they usually did with us, it was no. They had formal training in the car. They were evaluated daily in 36 critical areas of performance on a scale of 1 to 7. At the end of the 8 weeks, or what was it, 14, it might have been 8 weeks. When we started, it was 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. At the end of the 8 weeks, you had to be at least a 4 in all areas. And if you didn't, then you could be referred back for remedial or you were terminated. Mm-hmm. And it covered how do you drive the car, to your knowledge of the vehicle and traffic law and the penal law, your interactions with city, how do you get along with minorities, your report writing abilities, your common sense and decision-making abilities.
So then you were the first ones to go
yeah,
through all that?
I was the first training officer, myself and Howard Brokaw. Mm-hmm. And then a couple years later when I made sergeant, then I was promoted to be supervisor of it. And then all the field training officers were under me. So I had a lot of input as to what we were training and how we were training, mm-hmm. which I thought was important. Mm-hmm.
So does something like that exist now, today?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. There are very few police departments in the country that don't have field training. Even state police are doing it now. Mm-hmm. It's just that important and that critical.
Mm-hmm. So you were one of the first to do it?
Yeah, I was very first. Mm-hmm. Myself and Howard went to Monroe County Community College for that training, and was put on by a captain from the San Jose Police Department and a psychologist, I think it was a psychologist from California. And those two guys were on the road pushing this program that started in San Jose. So that's how long ago this was. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that was quite a course.
But it was a critical thing.
It was critical for these young men now. Right. These young men, when they go to their basic now, I don't know how long it is, but it's a long time. And then when they get out, they are fully trained, but they're not fully experienced. So now they go into field training for the experience. And they've got another 12 weeks, I think, of field training after that. They'll rotate through different shifts. They'll rotate through different training officers. Everybody's a little bit different in what they expect and what they're looking for. And by the time he's done with that, he's about as ready as he can be for that first day on the road by himself. Mm-hmm. He's not going to do everything right, but he's not going to make it so bad that we can't fix it by that time.
So do you, I know you said it's hard to recall all these cases. 43 years is just
it's a long time.
Amount of time.
It is.
Do you recall, I know we were just talking about specific cases, but do you recall any that stick out in your mind that, as far as the type of work you had to do to solve it or something?
Yeah, because I loved investigation so much, it was always, what do I need? Where am I? Obviously, if I could get a confession, that was usually very critical because that made my job a lot easier. I remember a case over in Alba where a lady who had a beautiful house, and her husband was, he ran an operation on the muck, and they used to come to the house to get paychecks, and she said, I think somebody was in my house because some jewelry is missing. And I went in this beautiful house, and I'm looking around, and I could see where the guy had to go. And I noticed there were some smudges on the wall. And I said, that looks like a fingerprint. So I had a little bit of training in fingerprints, but I put the powder on the fingerprint, and there was a fingerprint there. It was a pretty good fingerprint. The problem is I couldn't lift it off the wall because it was coming out in pieces. So what I had to do was take a photograph of the fingerprint. Well, that's all I can do. Well, I used a close-up lens. I took the photograph, and I took it over to Terry Rodland at the State Police. He was working ID, and he was a great guy. He really taught me a lot about getting fingerprints. And he had to set the thing up. He had to convert it, because it's backwards when you do fingerprints, so the real fingerprint is just the opposite. And he had to put it in a 1-to-1 scale, and he had to figure out how far away it was, and he had to do all of that, and he did. And lo and behold, we were able to come up with a suspect, and we put him in the house, and he was convicted basically solely by that fingerprint. Otherwise, we never would have got that guy. We might have suspected he did it, and there's a lot of people in and out of the house, so yeah. So I felt pretty good about that one. That was a lot to go through to get one guy.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing right
Those
there.
sorts of things.
See, people don't know
right.
what it takes to, to get somebody on a job
right.
like that.
You know, and I had to have a lot of informants. I had to be able to work with people who really had no reason to talk to me, but sometimes I gave them a reason if they got a ticket or something. But the reality of it is, it says, look, with all of my informants, you always protect your informants. You never expose your informants. I say, hey, look, I'm not going to have you sign any papers. I'm not going to have you come into court to testify. But look, I know you know who did this burglary or whatever it was I was looking into. All I want you to do is give me a name. Because instead of looking for everyone in the world as a suspect, now I can kind of key in on one person. And let me see if I can come up with enough that would lead a person to come to the conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that he is responsible. That always made my job a lot easier. Well, just give me a name. Let me see where I can go with that. So informants were very big in our job. They have to be. We're not out there on the streets, you know. So, and it's trying to instill in these young guys that you need informants. And it's not the dirty, seamy side of life that you would imagine that informants are. But there's just a lot of people who no longer want to become involved with the police. We just have that stigma, and I don't want to be a rat, or you know, I don't want to be known as helping the police in any way, so they don't. But in reality, sometimes it's just giving us a name. An anonymous phone call can be beneficial.
Do you think that that over all these years that you were able to get people to talk to you because you were a personable person? You got kind of, you know, I mean, like you said, it's hard for people to cross over and talk to people who may know something.
Yes, and in this job, you have to be kind of an actor, a chameleon, and then when we're looking for prospective investigators, we have to have people who can do that, who are not single, one-dimensional personalities. Because when you're talking to somebody, you may have to change your role, your personality, a lot of different ways until you come up with a combination that person is willing to confide in you. And so that's what we have to do. So that's what we're looking for in our road officers who might be coming down the hall to CID. One-dimensional is not good. The ability to think on your feet and change personalities or become sympathetic with whatever it is that you're trying to get out of the person, that's what you have to do. And Howard Owens did that write-up on me, and he said that I could talk the feathers off a pheasant. I'd never heard that one, and I don't know where that came from, because I don't talk very much unless somebody asks me a question. So.
Yeah, I know. I know. When I send you emails, you only answer what I ask.
Yes.
You won't give me anything more or anything less.
No.
I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but to do this job, I mean, this long, and to be able to solve cases, you have to, like you said, you have to be able to.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to listen.
Yeah.
My goodness. You can talk all day long, but you also got to be willing to listen. And you also have to be able to realize that maybe you don't really know how this happened, and that guy you're talking to does. And you better listen to what he's saying, because it may make some sense, including witnesses. A lot of young officers make the mistake of putting the blinders on and believing that they already know what happened. And then when they start talking to people, if they hear something that doesn't fit into their theory of what happened, they throw it out. They dismiss it and say, hey, you can't do that. You have to wait until you get all the information, sit down, analyze what you have, and then make some decisions as to what might have happened and who might be responsible.
So, you know, you're walking out this door, there's a large amount of experience that's going to be leaving this building. When you're like you're one of the guys, most senior guys here, okay? And so I'm sure that makes the sheriff a little nervous. You had a lot of turnover here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how's the place going to fare without all this experience you have here?
They are not going to miss a beat when I walk out the door. There was stuff that I didn't know that I figured out on my own, and they will do the same thing. There is no, what's the right way to say it? Experience is important. It's very important. But the mere fact that you don't have experience doesn't mean you can't do the job. It just means it might take you a little bit longer. This place will not miss a beat by my departure. They know my phone number, and if there's a problem, they can certainly call me, or maybe I can make things a little easier for them. I'm perfectly willing to do that. But they have to learn on their own, too. They'll do fine. Believe me, they will do fine. These guys are good.
And so, coming in here every day, you sign in every day. Today was your last day to sign in. You come in, 6:30, 7 o'clock or something like that?
Yeah, I'm usually up early.
Yeah. So that's your routine. So what are your plans now? What's your routine going to be?
Well, that's probably one of my biggest fears is Monday morning, what do I do? Because that's all I've ever done is go to work. Right. So now what? But I got a lot of projects at home. So all those things that I used to have to hurry home, take days off to get started and work the weekends through, I don't have to do that anymore. I can take my time and do it correctly and do it the way that I want to do it without having to worry about interruptions. So I'm looking forward to that.
You're always on call, right?
Yeah, I've been on call 24/7 for 25 years, and I don't sleep very well, and I'm looking to tonight's going to be my first good night's sleep.
You get a lot of calls in the middle of the night?
Yeah, I'll get a lot of calls in the middle of the night, and the guys are very good about it. If it could wait, it would wait, but if they needed an answer, they would call, or if it was something important that I needed to know about, they called. So yeah, my phone's going off. I asked my wife, the phone's going off a lot, and it's just part of the job. If you can't stand that, get out of the kitchen then, because that's part of the job. And Joe Graff is coming behind me, and he knows it very well. He's been on call a long time, and he knows the drill. Except his role is going to be a little bit different now. He's going to be responsible for crime scenes for what we are doing now that's going to come up in court a year later. That's going to be Joe's responsibility. He's got to make sure that we're doing things right, because when we get into court, number one, we don't want to make a mistake that's going to let the guy get off. And we certainly don't want to make it look like we don't know what we're doing, because we do know what we're doing. Joe's job now is to make sure that we're doing things right. And he's going to be reading, he's going to be looking at the recent case law and Supreme Court decisions and Court of Appeals decisions. He has to stay on top. And we're getting new laws every day. You got to be on top of it. You got to know the answer. And they're going to be coming to him for the answer, and he's got to know it.
Is that one of the things that made you decide that, okay, I'm hanging it up here? What made you decide? I know you've been doing this a while, but
they always say that you'll know when it's time, and there was one day almost a year ago when all of a sudden it just really it's time to go, and there was nothing that was said, there was nothing that was done. I was in my office, I was by myself. It was kind of weird, and it just had kind of happened. And I was originally intended to go in January, but then some things happened with the sheriff's office that Bill Sharon asked me to stay, which I think was probably a good idea, because let's face it, this was one really cold, lousy winter. What would I have done if I had taken off in January? So that worked out pretty good. Now look at the beautiful day we have today. Ooh, we couldn't ask for a better one. So
at least for a few hours.
Yeah, let's just see what happens. That's New York. But and I think what I've noticed over the years, the biggest change is the electronics, and everything now is a search warrant. Everything is telephones and video cameras and checking for this and checking for that, and there's only certain ways you can get the access to that information, and it's just becoming very technical. It's making the jobs a lot easier. The information you're getting is fantastic, but in order to get it, there's a lot of personal safeguards involved, people's privacy, that you have to make sure you're doing things legally. And it's just like, I'm just used to knocking on the door and talking and getting what I need, and if I need a search warrant, I'll go get a search warrant. But now with electronics, it's all different.
Is that me?
No, that's that thing up there.
I wondered what that was.
Yeah, I don't know what that. It does that every once in a while.
So at this point, there's a change in the way you're investigating, is what you're saying, and that there's another step that's being. There's
another dimension to it that wasn't there before.
Yeah. So at this point, it probably would be a good. Like
Yep.
I said, a good time for somebody new to come in.
It
and
is.
have that.
Oh, absolutely. These guys are tech savvy already.
Yeah.
These cell phone maneuverings and computer maneuverings, these are just secondhand for them. They're no problem at all. So, yep.
And so you feel like you're leaving your office in good
I
hands
am. I'm leaving the office in good hands. This is an outstanding crew of guys down that back hall, And Joe Graff is a extremely intelligent, affable, a good leader. It's not missing a beat. I'm so glad that he was given the opportunity to replace me, because when I walk out of here this afternoon with my wife, I'm not going to look back. I'm not going to have any regrets saying, oh my God, I hope they do okay. They're going to do fine. They're going to do fine.
And so what's your first project when you get home? You said you got a lot of projects. So what
First project. Well, I got a load of concrete coming for the new barn, so I got to get the boat out of the way and all that stuff. That'll be one of the things I got to do. Yeah.
So you got some personal projects.
Yes.
And things around the house.
Yep.
And
There were a lot of personal projects.
yeah.
You know, the house that was built in 2014 or 2004. I mean, things are starting to get old. Things that need to be replaced. There's some flooring issues. You know, there's a beautiful walkout basement that I want to utilize more. I got the big barn out there now. Oh, I got more things to do than you can shake a stick at.
Okay. So and if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
Me, 66.
66. Okay. Yeah. That's
Just
a lot.
turned 66
You
in
just
March.
turned 66. Huh?
Yeah. It's time. I still feel good. I still love coming to work. No, boy, it wasn't my decision. Oh, I can't do that anymore. No, I still love coming to work. But it's time.
Anything else you want to add that we haven't talked about?
I think just my appreciation to everyone who supported me personally, supported the sheriff's office and what we were trying to do. If I ever upset you, it wasn't personal. It was because I couldn't talk about it. I always thought that I had a pretty good relationship with the media, because we have to be open what we're doing to some extent. And you folks were always very good knowing that if you can't talk about it, you can't talk about it. Give us what you can, and that's what I tried to do. And we'll give Joe a little bit of time, and I'm pretty sure you're going to find Joe will do the same thing.